Well, thank you all for coming. First of all, I'd like to really thank from the bottom of my heart, Sang-Yon and the DATS Museum and Press for bringing both my work and Barbara's work here and bringing us here to Korea. It's really been a fantastic experience for both of us to have been in this time in Korea. I'd also like to thank the whole staff of DATS Press and Museum for the wonderful show and the beautiful books that they produced of our work. Okay, Through a Liquid Mirror was the title of my first book of underwater work, and I've kind of kept it as a title for my prolonged black and white work of the ocean. It's a play off the book Through a Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, where Alice passes through a mirror and goes into a totally different world. And I feel like the surface of the ocean is the same way. You pass through, it's like a mirror, and you pass through it and you're in another world with different rules and different truths. In 1983, I graduated from Pratt Institute in New York, and just got a teaching job at University of Hawaii. I had lived in Hawaii before, so as a coming home present, I bought myself an Iconis underwater camera and decided I wanted to photograph surfers underwater. I first tried photographing in color, and all I got were blue. There was no other color in it, and the pictures were very murky. So I switched to black and white film and extended the contrast. And I felt like the black and white film made the photographs much more surreal. It could be swimmers going through the ocean, or it could be people flying through the sky. So I liked that effect. The first photographs I took underwater of the surfers, I would just go out in the surf and photograph, whoever happened to be there. Usually I didn't know who I was photographing. But later I photographed one particular body surfer named Mark Cunningham, who was considered the greatest body surfer in the world. And here he's riding a wave underwater, being pulled instead of sliding down the face of a wave, he's being pulled by the suction of the wave, the way that dolphins and seals surf. Later, I photographed swimmers. I started photographing all kinds of people in the water who were very good in the water, who had a natural affinity with the ocean. And these are swimmers in the Ironman triathlon. And I remember this particular photograph, me and my dive buddy wanted to photograph the Ironman, and we went into the water very early. It was around dawn, or maybe even a little before dawn, and everything was so peaceful. And then my dive partner pointed up, and I saw a few swimmers come over, and then within seconds, the ocean was a white froth filled with this competitive frenzy. And still 30 feet below, it was very peaceful. I photographed competitive freedivers who would dive as deep as they could on a breath of air, a very dangerous, extreme sport. This is a freediver diving through the bubbles of decompressing safety divers. They go so deep that the safety divers can't be on air, they have to be on mixed gases. In 2002, we had a big international freedive meet in Kona, and most of the best freedivers in the world came for the meet, and this was the day before the actual meet. They're practicing. And this is one of the best freedivers in the world, a French diver named Guillaume Neri, who this is the actual competition, and he's diving. In 2009, I was invited by a big national scientific organization to accompany There are crews to the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, which are some of the most, they're to the northwest of the main Hawaiian Islands, and they are some of the most remote islands in the world. And this is the chief scientist who's breathing up, what they call breathing up. You breathe before you go through all this deep breathing before you do a deep dive. And he's spearfishing, going to dive about 100 feet. And this lady happens to be the man before his sister. And she's also a great free diver. She was the U.S. spearfishing champion, women's spearfishing champion, but here she is diving with spinner dolphins, and she's turning upside down, swimming under the school of dolphins, turning upside down to relate to the dolphins. And a man diving with pilot whales. And a photographer photographing an oceanic white-tip shark, which are very aggressive, very curious sharks. And they'll usually come right when they see you, they'll come right at you, and they'll come maybe a half a meter to you, like this close, before they finally turn. And I've been hit by them before. And Cousteau called them the most dangerous sharks in the ocean. And a school of spinner dolphins surfacing, and a humpback whale diving. Sometimes with these experiences, I remember the experience and the encounter, but the individual pictures I take are kind of a blur to me. I don't remember them. So when I look at like a picture like this, I can't believe that for a few seconds in my life I was actually in that position. And these are a very rare small whale called melonhead whales. And again, humpback whales surfacing. I love the way that they're like embracing as they come to the surface. And sometimes I do crazy things in the water, and this time I jumped in the water in front of what's called a heat run, which means a bunch of males were chasing a female. So the female who had a baby with her made very tight circles around me when she came to me, and I could see the males in the background, and I think she was using me because I'm so strange and ugly looking to them to keep the males away. And this was on an island, a beautiful island off California in the kelp forest, a sea lion, and the name of the island is Santa Barbara Island. And this is a very different environment, but it's sea lions also in very murky water off Monterey. They were with maybe 1 meter visibility, and they were coming at me. And I always loved the way that sand looks when the undertow of a wave is pulling it over the bottom. And I finally got a picture that I felt really captured that feeling with a green sea turtle. And another green sea turtle at one of my favorite bays called Ho'okena, and I love the way the sand patterns kind of mirror the patterns on the turtle shell. And manta ray. In Kona, they have these night manta dives where many divers go into the ocean with their flashlights, their underwater flashlights, and they all shine their lights straight up and create a column of light which brings plankton in, which brings sometimes up to 20 manta rays. And this is again in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. So there was a hurricane to the south, and it was really rough conditions, and there was just one little bay that we could dive in, but it was a beautiful bay. And this is an eagle ray diving under a big breaking wave. It's breaking on the cliff. And again, another oceanic white-tip shark with pilot fish. And this is probably about 6 kilometers off the shore and about 4 kilometers depth of ocean. and it's very clear water, maybe 200 feet visibility. So when you dive down in water that clear, and it's like the ocean's bottomless, you really have a feeling of vertigo. Just look down and down and down. A big school of gray reef sharks coming toward me. And hammerhead sharks off Cocos Island in Costa Rica. And this again is in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. It's the most remote of those islands, called Kure, and there's these beautiful sand channels that radiate out from the island, and these are Galapagos sharks. And these are seascape pictures, the beginning of seascape section, and this is a big breaking wave on the reef. I'd often go for these swims in a bay called Kealakekua Bay, and I'd photograph fish or dolphins, but I'd have film left over when I came back, so I'd take pictures in the shallow water, usually of the waves breaking and causing clouds of sand, but in this case, there wasn't really a wave, it was the reflections and refractions on the underside of the water and at the bottom of the very shallow water. And I did a series of photographs just looking down on the seascape at a bay called Ho'okana Bay, and it was almost, because the area was so ambiguous how large an area it was covering, it was almost like doing aerial photographs. So I love the sand patterns here. And the waves would kick up the sand and create these sand clouds. Just another one. And then I decided to kind of do a similar thing above the water. And there's these beautiful mountains above Honolulu, behind Honolulu, called the Ko'olaus, and there's always a lot of mist on these islands. So I started on these mountains, and I started photographing these mountains with the mist. I didn't want to photograph them when it was a bright sunny day, only when it was really misty. And I think that this work was really influenced by Oriental scroll painting, which I really admire. And I photographed a lot. I did a series called Relics, which were man-made objects under the ocean, but I mostly photographed shipwrecks. And this is a Bikini Atoll. It's a Japanese battleship called the Nagato. It was Admiral Yamamoto's battleship that he ordered the attack on Pearl Harbor from. And a sunken yacht in Kona, where I live. And these were pennant fish, and I saw the school of pennant fish hovering over the yacht, and I was very difficult to position myself so that I could photograph through the school of fish at the yacht. And these are goatfish in a sunken water barge in very shallow water at Midway Island. I like the way that the structure of the ship looks like Greek ruins to me. This was a Japanese fishing boat that washed up ashore on Kure, that very remote Northwest Hawaiian island. It was a ghost ship. They never found the crew, but it washed up on the reef, and over the years, storms brought the ship over the reef into the middle of the lagoon. And at the bottom of the photograph is a huge school of tiny fish, a kind of sardine, and what you see on the top is the shape of a passing wave. And then I started photographing fish schools, and this is a kind of fish called a holy, which I'm still working on photographing, but I have a lot of new photographs I haven't scanned yet. But I really got into photographing a fish by the Hawaiian name of a kuli, which had big schools that were really uniform, really had a lot of form. Oops, I went the wrong way, go back. And here I just dove over the top of the school. So you can see how dense it is, the school. And in this photograph, I was actually diving into the school, and it was like a big funnel. I was diving down into it, surrounded by the school. This was probably the most dense school I've ever seen. And you can see the predators on the upper right-hand side, which are causing the school to become so condensed. And when as I spent time and watched these schools, I started wondering, they act so much like an individual, like the whole school is the being. And the individual fish are like cells in it. So I started wondering what that says about, what is the individual? Is it the fish or is it the whole school? And so I was wondering what this says about life in general. How much we're really just a bunch of individuals, or how much we're connected as a whole. And the same thing with people. Do we really end at our skin? Are we just this, or are we part of, a larger unit, something larger, something more universal? So this work really made me think about those issues. And these are blue trevally, which are predators for the aculi. And a great barracuda, which is about 2 meters long. It's hard to tell the scale. And a free diver who I told him, you want to see something really cool, come with me and we'll dive on the aculi. So he dove down and was amazed. He was a good free diver. He was able to dive down about 20 meters and just sit on the bottom and be circled by these aculi. And I published a book on aculi, and I felt like I was finished with the project. And just recently, about 2 or 3 months ago, I was diving, and I found this other school that was different. It was an aculi school that also had another kind of similar fish, but different fish called opello. And the aculi are very uniform and very orderly, and they create these incredible shapes, but the opello are all over the place. They're just swimming like crazy. They're like anarchist fish. So the combination created all this incredible movement. So it was like a combination of order and chaos together. And here you can see kind of an overall view. You can see the coral reef at the bottom, and then above that you can see the really orderly aculi school, and then the opello up above that. But then the silverfish through the opello are baby aculi. They're called halalu. This is back to that island on the Northwest Hawaiian Islands where the eagle ray was. And again, these are big breaking waves, but the waves were filled with tiny fish. And I kept wanting to get closer and closer to the waves. And I had a dive partner. This was with the scientific organization, and she wanted to make sure that I was safe, so she kept saying, come back, and I would try and get closer. But I was used to being in big waves, but they wanted me to keep safe. Anyway, after photographing the schools of fish, I wanted to also photograph flocks of birds for the same reasons of looking at that question of what's the individual. So I went to England to photograph starlings. And then I went up to Oregon to photograph migrating snow geese. So these are the geese taking off from a lake. This is starlings again in England. And this was on the coast of Oregon, and I saw this, way out to sea, I saw a line, just this moving line going down up the coast. And I used my telephoto, it was way up, but it's the migrating flock of Canada geese migrating north. Okay. And I keep changing what my favorite picture is, but right now this is my favorite. And this was also taken in England. It was at dusk, almost nighttime, and it's a marsh with a farmhouse in the distance, and this elliptical pattern of circling starlings. And at the bottom you can see where they're kind of swooping down to land, and then up above you can see some more flocks coming in to join them. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you.